Seraphina Roth sat alone at a linen-draped table near the back of the reception hall, cradling a delicate china cup of tea in her hands. The lavish wedding of her college friend Beatrice Valerius was in full swing around her, a whirlwind of velvet and whispers. Laughter and music floated beneath crystal chandeliers as elegantly dressed guests mingled with glasses of sparkling nectar. Seraphina felt out of place amid the opulence, a simple navy dress in a sea of designer gowns, an ordinary woman among the high society of Thornwood, Tennessee. She had gladly flown to the secluded estate to support Beatrice's big day, unaware her friend was marrying into a very different kind of family. Needing a quiet moment away from the crowd, Seraphina retreated to a corner table by a marble pillar. She sipped her chamomile tea, steadying herself with its warmth, trying to ignore the prickle of cold air that seemed to follow certain guests. That was when she noticed him. 2 tables over sat a man alone with his own cup of tea, though he never seemed to drink. Tall and lean in a midnight black suit that seemed to absorb the light around him, he was strikingly handsome in a chiseled, remote way. Even from afar, he exuded an aura of quiet authority that bordered on the primordial. Unlike the laughing guests, this man's expression remained distant, his eyes watchful and luminous, as if he stood guard over a realm only he could see. Seraphina wondered who he was. Perhaps a distant relative of the groom, or one of Beatrice's elusive brothers she had never met. As Seraphina mused, an elegant figure slipped into the chair beside her without warning. She started, nearly sloshing her tea as the air around her suddenly turned several degrees colder. Beatrice's mother, Lady Jacqueline Valerius, sat poised in a champagne lace gown, her dark hair impeccably coiffed with silver at the temples. The older woman's face held a gracious smile, but her hazel eyes were edged with a sharp, ancient worry. Before Seraphina could speak, Jacqueline leaned in close, bringing a subtle waft of expensive perfume and an urgent, icy whisper. "Pretend you are my son's fiancée," she commanded. Seraphina blinked, unsure she had heard right, the music of the violins suddenly sounding discordant. "I beg your pardon," she stammered, her breath hitching in the presence of such intense, regal desperation. Jacqueline's manicured fingers, which felt like marble against Seraphina's skin, lightly grasped her wrist under the table. "Please, my dear," she hissed softly. "It is an emergency, just for tonight. I would not ask if it were not vital to our survival." Seraphina's heart kicked in her chest, a frantic drum against her ribs. Pretend to be her son's fiancé? Her gaze instinctively darted toward the man in the black suit. He had set his cup down and was scanning the crowd with a faint scowl, his pupils dilating until his eyes were wells of ink. He must be Jacqueline's son, Beatrice's older brother, Lucius Valerius. Beatrice had mentioned Lucius was intensely private, and had not settled down despite the family's long history of expectations. Seraphina certainly had not heard he was engaged. She looked back at Jacqueline in bewilderment, feeling as though she had stepped into a Gothic novel. The matriarch's face was tense with near panic, though she maintained a calm facade that could fool any mortal. Whatever this was, it was not a prank. A million questions tangled in Seraphina's mind, but a murmur from nearby drew Jacqueline's attention over Seraphina's shoulder. "That man approaching, Lord Dominic Gallo," Jacqueline whispered, a hint of genuine fear in her voice. "He must believe Lucius is engaged. There is no time to explain more. Will you help us, Seraphina?" "Please." Seraphina followed the older woman's gaze. An imposing gentleman in an ivory-white suit was crossing the hall, flanked by a younger man who moved with a predatory twitch. Other guests greeted him with polite smiles that did not reach their eyes, and a path seemed to clear before him as if by instinct. Something about his arrival quieted the laughter nearby, replaced by a heavy, stifling silence. Even without knowing his identity, Serafina felt a prickle of warning at the predatory grace in his movement. He moved like a wolf among sheep. Her mouth went dry. She barely knew the Valerius family beyond Beatrice, but Jacqueline's desperation was palpable, radiating a cold heat that made Serafina's skin crawl. And if a man like Lord Gallo expected Lucius to have a fiancée, what would he do if he learned it was a lie? Serafina's instinct screamed to say no and slip away from whatever this shadow world intrigue was. But Jacqueline's plea and the sheer urgency in her ancient eyes made up her mind. Serafina gave a tiny nod, her heart pounding. "All right," she whispered. "I will do it." Relief flooded Jacqueline's eyes, a fleeting warmth in the frost. In an instant, the older woman stood and drew Serafina up with her, looping a supportive arm through hers in a gesture of warm familiarity that felt surprisingly protective. Serafina tried to quell her trembling as Lord Gallo arrived before them like a shark gliding into shallow waters. "Jacqueline, good evening," Gallo greeted smoothly, his voice a low, gravelly timbre. He bent to brush polite kisses near Jacqueline's cheeks, but his eyes never left Serafina. He was tall and silver-haired, with a courteous smile that failed to warm the cold appraisal in his dark eyes. His gaze shifted to Serafina, raking over her in thinly veiled curiosity, as if he were trying to scent her very soul. "And who is this lovely young lady? I do not recall seeing her at other family gatherings over the last few decades." Jacqueline beamed, not missing a beat, her poise returning like a suit of armor. "This is Serafina Roth," she said, patting Serafina's arm with a firm, steadying touch. "My son, Lucius's fiancée." Serafina hoped her smile looked natural, though her lips felt stiff. As Lord Gallo's eyes bore into her, a flicker of surprise crossed his features, quickly masked by that thin, dangerous smile. "Fiancé? Lucius is engaged? How delightful and truly unexpected," he remarked, his voice dripping with unspoken skepticism. "It is a recent development," Jacqueline replied lightly, her tone as sharp as a diamond. "With our Beatrice's wedding, we have not had time to formally announce it to the court yet." "I see," Gallo said, his gaze sharpening. "The Valerius family is full of surprises tonight. It seems the king has finally found his queen." Just then, a firm, cold hand clasped Lord Gallo's shoulder from behind. "Lord Dominic, good to see you," came a calm, resonant male voice that sent a shiver down Serafina's spine. "I see you have met Serafina." Serafina turned her head and found Lucius Valerius suddenly at her side. He must have approached in total silence, moving faster than her human eyes could track. Up close, Lucius was even more imposing. Broad-shouldered and impeccably groomed, his slate-gray eyes assessed the scene with cool, terrifying control. A polite half-smile touched his lips, though Serafina sensed a coiled, supernatural tension beneath his suit. He looked at her then, and for a fleeting second, his gaze softened into something curious, something ancient and lonely, before the mask returned. Lord Gallo chuckled, though the sound held no warmth. "Lucius, my congratulations. You have kept this engagement very quiet, almost as if it were a secret, guarded by the grave." Lucius slid his arm around Serafina's waist, pulling her subtly against his side. The contact was startling and intimate. His body felt like solid ice, yet there was a strange, magnetic strength in his hold. Serafina's breath hitched, but she realized he was doing it to look the part. His hand rested possessively at her hip, his fingers long and elegant. "Thank you, Lord Gallo," Lucius said evenly. "We did not want to distract from Beatrice's celebration. Announcing our union can wait until after the sun sets on tonight's festivities." "How considerate," Gallo replied, an edge beneath his genial tone. His eyes flicked to Lucius's arm around Serafina, then back to Lucius's face, searching for a crack in the façade. "I admit I am relieved you found a match on your own, since our previous discussion about ancient alliances did not seem to interest you," Gallo continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Serafina felt Lucius's grip on her tighten ever so slightly, a silent warning. "I prefer to choose my own path, and my own partner," Lucius said, a note of steel in his courteous voice. "I am sure you understand the value of a choice freely made, Lord Dominic." Of course, Gallo's tone was amicable, but a vein in his temple ticked. After a beat, he inclined his head. "Well, I must give my regards to your father. Enjoy your evening, Lucius, and it was a pleasure to meet you, Lady Serafina." He nodded to her, even daring to lift her free hand and brush it with a cool, old-world kiss that felt like the touch of a dead leaf. "The pleasure is mine," Serafina managed softly, her voice remarkably steady despite the chaos in her mind. Lord Gallo moved on, his ivory suit vanishing into the crowd like a pale ghost. The instant he was out of earshot, Lucius released Serafina's waist as if her warmth burned him. Jacqueline exhaled a shaky breath, her hand flying to her throat. "I am sorry it had to be so sudden," she said, her voice low and frantic. "Dominic cornered me earlier. He was asking if you would reconsider the pact, Lucius." "Mother, what have you done?" Lucius cut in, his tone hushed and urgent. Serafina flinched at the controlled anger in his voice. It sounded like the rumble of an approaching storm. Lucius's storm-gray eyes fixed on his mother, then flicked toward Serafina with a piercing intensity. "Who exactly are you?" he demanded under his breath. "And why would you agree to this charade?" Serafina straightened, bristling at his tone despite her racing pulse. She was tired of being a pawn in a game she did not understand. "I am Beatrice's friend," she whispered back, meeting his icy gaze with her own. "Your mother asked for my help. I was trying to do the right thing for her, and for you, though I clearly have no idea what is actually happening." Jacqueline placed a placating hand on Lucius's arm. "Do not blame her, Lucius. I roped Serafina into this at the last minute. Dominic was pressing me about that blood alliance, and I panicked. I lied that you were already engaged to a mortal of high standing. He insisted on meeting her tonight." She gave Serafina an apologetic, weary glance. Lucius muttered a curse in a language Serafina did not recognize, something that sounded old and jagged. He turned slightly, angling himself to shield both women from curious onlookers. Around them, the reception carried on obliviously, guests laughing and music playing, yet an invisible dagger hung over their heads now. "This is dangerous," Lucius said, his voice taut and grave. "If Dominic Gallo even suspects this engagement is fake, it could get us both destroyed. Do you understand? This is not a game of social status, Serafina. It is a matter of life and finality." Serafina felt the blood drain from her face. She had known it was risky, but hearing Lucius speak of destruction drove the point home. She swallowed hard and nodded. "I understand." "Good." His eyes bored into hers, fierce and unyielding. "Stay by my side for the rest of the night. Do exactly as I say, and we might get through this." Serafina managed a faint nod. "All right." Fear warred with a spark of resolve inside her. She had not missed the way Lucius positioned himself protectively in front of her when Gallo was near. As intimidating and cold as he was, he had not thrown her to the wolves. He had played along to protect his family's secret. Lucius offered his arm to her, a cordial, practiced smile already back on his face as a few relatives glanced their way. "Smile," he murmured tersely. Serafina forced a smile to her lips and placed her trembling hand on Lucius's arm. He guided her out of their quiet corner toward the glowing heart of the reception as if they were any other enamored couple. Less than 1 hour ago, she had been a nobody sipping tea alone. Now she was on the arm of a vampire king, pretending to be in love under the watchful eyes of ancient, hungry predators. "If you want to survive this night, you will do exactly as I say." Lucius's warning echoed cold and absolute in her mind as they stepped into the crowd. No matter how terrified she was, there was no turning back now. A waltz drifted from the string quartet as Lucius led Serafina onto the marble dance floor beneath the chandeliers. All around, couples swayed in the golden light. Serafina's nerves jangled, but she forced herself to mirror Lucius's composed demeanor. He rested a light hand against her upper back, his touch surprisingly steadying, and clasped her other hand in his. To onlookers, they might have looked like a picture-perfect engaged couple enjoying a romantic dance. They moved in silence for a few moments, the only sound the rustle of silk and the soft thud of her own heart. Finally, she drew a steadying breath and ventured a question. "That man, Lord Gallo, he is not just a family friend, is he? The way you and your mother reacted, what exactly is he?" Lucius guided her through a turn with effortless grace, maintaining the gentle smile on his face even as his eyes remained coldly alert. "He is a rival," Lucius said, his voice a low vibration. "A man who believes our kind should rule through fear and blood rather than shadow and restraint." Serafina bit her lip. "Our kind?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the lilting violins. Lucius's jaw tightened. He did not answer directly, but the coldness of his skin and the way he didn't seem to breathe were answer enough. Serafina's stomach flipped. "This is... you are all..." she breathed, the word failing her. Lucius's silence was telling. He finally gave the slightest nod. "Keep your voice down and keep smiling," he commanded. Serafina obeyed, pasting a faint smile even as her world tilted on its axis. For a moment, she was dizzy with the unreality of it. Her dear friend, Beatrice, had grown up steeped in this ancient, supernatural world. How had Serafina missed the signs? The way they avoided the sun, the timeless quality of their home, the stillness that hung about them. A gloved hand tapped Lucius's shoulder lightly. "May I cut in?" chimed Beatrice's bright voice. The bride stood beaming, her cheeks flushed with the artificial warmth of the evening. The music ebbed as the song ended. Lucius released Serafina, but kept a protective arm around her waist as they turned to Beatrice and her new husband. "Beatrice," he greeted warmly, leaning to kiss his sister's cheek. "Congratulations again, my dear sister. Thank you, but do not change the subject." Beatrice wagged a finger before turning an incredulous, delighted grin on Serafina. "You and my brother engaged? When did this happen? Why did you not tell me? Oh, heavens, I nearly fainted when Mother announced it to the inner circle." Serafina's face burned under her friend's delighted scrutiny. Lying to dangerous strangers was one thing. Lying to Beatrice's face was far harder. "Beatrice, I am sorry," she stammered, frantically trying to conjure an explanation that would not break her friend's heart. "It all happened so fast. Lucius smoothly intervened, drawing Beatrice into a quick side hug. "It is my fault. It was sudden, and I wanted it to be a surprise for the family," he said, with a sheepish chuckle that sounded remarkably human. "We did not want to overshadow your day with our news." Beatrice's eyes welled with happy tears. "Steal my thunder? Are you crazy? Lucius, I am thrilled for you." She squealed and flung her arms around Serafina next, pulling her into a tight hug. "Serafina, you will be my sister for real now. This is the best surprise ever." Guilt twisted in Serafina's gut as she hugged Beatrice back. "I wanted to tell you, but we were trying to keep it quiet until the time was right," she said lamely. Beatrice pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I understand. Oh, Father is going to be so pleased you finally found someone, Lucius, and such a wonderful someone." She squeezed Serafina's hands, then Lucius's. "We need to catch up soon, but they are calling me for photos. Promise we will celebrate later, okay?" "Absolutely," Lucius smiled, giving his sister's hand a fond squeeze. "We will have much to talk about." Beatrice gave a final beaming glance between them and hurried off with her husband in tow. As she departed, Serafina's forced smile faded, her chest aching with the weight of the deception. She turned to Lucius, her eyes damp. "She is my best friend, and I just lied straight to her face." Lucius's expression softened, losing its hard, regal edges for a fleeting moment. "You did what was necessary to keep her wedding day peaceful and her life safe," he murmured. "We will explain it to her later if we can." The unresolved if hung in the air like a cold mist. Serafina felt a chill despite the warmth of the packed hall. If they survived tonight, if the ruse held, then they could explain. She understood the stakes now. Lucius guided her off the dance floor toward a quieter corner by a row of obsidian columns. He leaned close, keeping his voice low. "I need to check on something with my men. Stay here by the table. Do not wander off under any circumstances." "All right," she replied. His commanding tone rankled a bit, but Serafina knew it came from genuine concern for her life. "I will be right here," she assured him. Lucius gave her a long look, as if to reaffirm she was safe, and then stepped away to speak to a burly man in a dark suit near the edge of the room. They conversed gravely. Serafina saw Lucius's gaze sweep over the crowd, then toward the exits, his body language taut and ready for battle. She let out a shaky breath. The adrenaline of the Fiancée performance was wearing off, leaving her acutely aware of how exposed she felt in a room full of immortals. If Lord Gallo truly had ill intentions, would he make a move tonight? What exactly was this talk of alliances and blood that had Jacqueline so spooked? Unable to bear simply standing idle while her mind raced, Serafina slipped out of the corner and headed toward the powder room to gather her thoughts. It was only a short walk down a side hall. She would be in view of Lucius's position until the very door. Inside the marbled room, Serafina splashed cold water on her wrists and took a few steadying breaths. She needed to keep it together. Just a bit longer, and this surreal night would be over. She could only hope it ended without violence. As she stepped back into the dim side hallway, hushed voices halted her in her tracks, making the move during the toast. "Are your men in position?" a low male voice said, the words echoing off the stone walls. "Yes, but we need the signal from inside," another man replied quietly. "Alistair said he would signal when the king is isolated. We get one shot at this." Serafina's blood ran cold. She pressed herself against the wall just around the corner from the voices. The king. That was Lucius's father, the patriarch. They were plotting something during the toast. A move on the king. One shot at this. Her mind raced. This sounded horrifically like an assassination plan. Heart-pounding, Serafina risked a peek around the corner through the cracked door to a service alcove. She recognized one speaker by profile. Alistair Valerius, a cousin of Beatrice's, whom she had seen at the family table. He was speaking in urgent whispers to a man in a caterer's uniform, half hidden in shadow. "It has to be tonight," Alistair was saying grimly. "Gallo wants it done, while all the key players are here. Once the lights go down for the toast and slideshow, we strike. Stick to the plan." Serafina clapped a hand over her mouth to contain a gasp. Betrayal from within. The traitor was Alistair, working with Lord Gallo to murder the king at his own daughter's wedding. And the signal would be when the lights dimmed for the wedding toast. She had to warn Lucius now. As she turned to slip away, her heel nudged a brass vase perched on a pedestal. The vase scraped against the marble with a cringe-worthy squeal. Instantly, the low voices in the alcove silenced. Serafina's stomach lurched. She darted back down the hall, but it was too late. Alistair stepped out from the alcove, his eyes narrowing as they caught the light with an unnatural glint. "Serafina," he said, sounding astonished to find her lurking. He briskly signaled the caterer to stay hidden. "What are you doing back here?" Serafina's mind raced, searching for a lie that would save her. She must not let on what she heard. Summoning a flustered smile, she stammered, "Oh, Alistair, I was just getting a bit of air." The hall was so warm, and I felt a bit dizzy. Alistair's gaze flickered with suspicion. He moved toward her with an unsettling, fluid speed. Behind him, the caterer lingered in the doorway, one hand inside his jacket, likely clutching a weapon. Serafina's pulse skyrocketed. Before Alistair could interrogate her further, a calm, commanding voice sounded from the main corridor behind her. "There you are. My love." Lucius's voice was cool and casual, but edged with a sharp warning. In a few strides, he was beside Serafina, slipping an arm around her shoulders. He looked at Alistair with friendly surprise. "Thank you for keeping my fiancée company, cousin." Alistair's eyes darted between them, then he forced a genial smile. "Of course, I just bumped into her now." Lucius gave a polite, tight smile that did not reach his eyes. "Well, we should be getting back. The toast is about to start." His grip on Serafina was steady and iron-strong as he drew her away. Alistair inclined his head, letting them pass. "Yes, the toast. Do not keep the king waiting," he said, his voice smooth, but with a glint of malice in his eyes. Serafina kept her own gaze down, her heart thundering, until Lucius guided her around the corner and out of Alistair's sight. Only then did Lucius's hand tighten, urgency radiating off him. He led her directly into a small antechamber off the main hall, secluded by heavy drapes. His eyes blazed as he turned to her. "Are you all right?" he demanded in a harsh whisper. "Did they hurt you?" "No," Serafina stuttered. "Lucius, I heard them. Alistair and another man. They are planning something during the toast. They said when the lights go down, they will strike at your father." Her words spilled out in a trembling rush. "Lord Gallo is behind it. Alistair is helping him. He is the traitor." Lucius's face went pale, then cold with a fury so intense the air in the room seemed to vibrate. "My own blood," he breathed, the words sounding like breaking ice. "I suspected betrayal, but not here. Not tonight." He ran a hand through his hair, his mind clearly racing through 1,000 years of strategy. "It is happening soon," Serafina urged, clutching his sleeve. "They were ready to move as soon as the toast starts." Lucius snapped into action, his regal presence filling the small room. "Listen carefully," he said, his eyes locking on hers. "Go to my mother and stay with her. You were right about everything, but it is about to get ugly, and I do not want you in the crossfire. Do you understand?" Serafina opened her mouth to protest. She did not want to leave him to face this alone. But he shook his head sternly. "Please," he added, his voice softening for a brief second. "Do as I say. I will keep my family safe. I will not let them hurt you either." The earnest fear in his ancient eyes silenced her. She nodded. All right. Relief flickered across his face. He squeezed her hand briefly, a touch that felt like a vow. "Thank you." They stepped back into the main reception, rejoining the sea of oblivious guests. The band's song ended, and waitstaff circulated to dim the lights as the master of ceremonies announced it was time for the king's toast and a slideshow of Beatrice's childhood. At the head table, the king stood with a silver goblet, ready to address the crowd. Serafina saw Jacqueline nearby, and swiftly made her way to the matriarch's side, linking arms as if merely sharing in the moment. Jacqueline gave her a puzzled look. "The lights," Serafina whispered urgently. "Something terrible will happen when they go down. Stay close to the king." Jacqueline's eyes widened. She understood immediately. Across the room, Lucius circled toward his father, subtly positioning himself behind the king's right shoulder as the slideshow screen flickered to life. His posture was tense, his hand drifting near his jacket. The king raised his glass. "Thank you all for sharing in this joyous—" His voice abruptly cut out as the lights went completely dark. For an instant, there was a heavy, expectant silence. A few guests murmured in surprise at the sudden blackness, but Serafina's eyes, already adjusted to the dim, caught a swift movement by the dais. A dark figure was climbing the few steps behind the king. She did not think. "Look out!" Serafina screamed, her voice shattering the hush. Her warning came a second before a muffled sound hissed through the air. A silenced weapon. In the strobing light of the first slideshow image now cast on the wall, Serafina saw the king recoil. A glass shattered, the silver goblet exploding in his grasp rather than the projectile piercing his heart. Screams erupted as pandemonium swept the hall. Some guests dove under tables, while others bolted for the exits. In the darkness near the dais, Serafina could just make out Lucius tackling a man in a caterer's uniform, Alistair's hired assassin. Before the man could strike again, they crashed to the floor in a snarling struggle that moved with inhuman speed. A chorus of shouts erupted from the periphery of the room as security engaged more hidden attackers. Jacqueline grabbed Serafina, pulling her down behind an overturned table. Serafina's ears rang with the sounds of the struggle, her pulse thundering. On the dais, Lucius wrestled the shooter ferociously. The weapon skittered across the marble floor. Lucius slammed the man's wrist against the ground once, twice, until the gunman cried out in pain. In seconds, 2 Valeria's security men descended and pinned the would-be assassin. "Lights!" someone bellowed. After a brief hiccup, the chandeliers flared back to life. The scene revealed was absolute chaos. Toppled chairs, cowering guests, and armed guards with weapons drawn. The king stood shakily, with Jacqueline and Beatrice clinging to him. Blood dripped from his palm where glass had cut it, but he seemed otherwise unharmed and utterly furious. He bellowed to the panicked crowd, "Everything is all right. Just a minor electrical accident. Please remain calm." It was an absurd explanation, but it calmed the mortal guests enough to stem a stampede. Many guests were hustled quickly out by family handlers, ending the reception in an unceremonious evacuation. Those in the know exchanged grim, understanding looks. Serafina rose on trembling legs. Lucius was already on his feet, barking orders to his men. The captured gunman was dragged from the hall. Not far off, another of Lord Gallo's accomplices lay unconscious, subdued by security. Lucius's gaze found Serafina across the room. In 2 long strides, he reached her. Without a word, he pulled her into an embrace. Serafina clutched his arms, her own body shaking now that the adrenaline was waning. "You saved him," Lucius murmured against her hair, a world of gratitude and worry in his voice. "You saved me," Serafina replied, her voice hitching. He had taken on an armed attacker in the dark to protect them all without hesitation. Lucius pulled back just enough to scan her face. His hands firm on her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "No." She managed a small teary smile. "Lucius, Alistair was—" "I know," he interjected grimly. His eyes flashed with a lethal pain. "He is gone, slipped out in the chaos. But he will not get far. We will find him." As if on cue, one of Lucius's men hurried over. "Alistair is not on the grounds, sir. He must have fled as soon as the lights came on." Lucius's jaw clenched. "Lock down the estate. Send teams to every property we own immediately." The man rushed off. The king, still in a fury, approached with Jacqueline at his side. He placed a heavy, cold hand on Lucius's shoulder, then, to Serafina's surprise, on hers. "Lady Serafina," the king said gravely, "you have my eternal gratitude. You likely saved my existence tonight." His authoritative voice softened into something more paternal. "We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Serafina shook her head. "I just reacted. I am glad you are all right." Jacqueline hugged Serafina tightly. "You have the heart of a lioness, my dear. Such courage in the face of darkness. But I insist you stay with us tonight somewhere safe," Jacqueline continued. "Gallo and Alistair will answer for this betrayal, but until they are caught, you are a target." Lucius nodded in agreement, already half distracted by reports on a security radio. "Mother, take Serafina to the inner sanctum and keep her close. I will coordinate the search." Serafina opened her mouth to object. She did not want to be shut away while more danger unfolded. But Lucius gently squeezed her hand, his eyes pleading. "Please do this for me. I need to know you are safe so I can focus." Swallowing hard, Serafina acquiesced. "All right." He managed a faint, relieved smile and lifted her hand to his lips in a brief, impetuous kiss. "Thank you," he said softly. Then Lucius turned, gathering a cadre of men with vengeful purpose in their eyes. Within minutes, he and the king and their loyal guards had swept out of the wrecked wedding hall and into the night, on the hunt for their betrayers. As Jacqueline hurried Serafina toward a waiting car, Serafina's heart throbbed with worry. Lucius was heading into even more danger, and she could do nothing now but pray he would be all right. "They are planning to kill my father tonight." Lucius's words from earlier echoed in her mind. He had stopped that plot, but the night was far from over, and the shadows of Tennessee felt longer and colder than ever before. The Valerius mansion was locked down tight, a fortress of stone and ancient secrets. Serafina hovered in the grand foyer with Jacqueline, both of them too restless to sit. The betrayal at the wedding had thrown the household into a quiet, simmering turmoil. Every tick of the ornate clock on the wall deepened the knot in Serafina's stomach. She replayed the scene in the hall over and over. The darkness, the silver goblet shattering, Lucius's silhouette in the flicker of the screen. He was out there now, stalking a cornered rival and a traitorous cousin. She had never felt so frightened for anyone in her life. Jacqueline noticed Serafina wringing her hands and guided her to a plush chair. "Sit, my dear," she urged gently. "You will collapse from the strain. Here, drink some water." Serafina obeyed, sipping the water Jacqueline pressed into her hand. "I am sorry," Serafina murmured. I cannot stop worrying about him." Jacqueline managed a small smile despite her own fear. "It means your heart is in the right place. You care for my son. Anyone can see that. And he cares for you in a way I have not seen in 300 years. Serafina opened her mouth to protest, but no denial came. She did care for Lucius far more than she had intended. Before she could respond, the front door swung open. Lucius stood on the threshold, flanked by 2 guards. Relief and exhaustion were etched on his pale face. Jacqueline rushed forward. "Lucius, thank heavens. Did you find them?" Lucius stepped in, nodding tersely. "We caught Gallo's remaining men trying to flee the county. Alistair's location is confirmed. He is holed up at a safe house in the hills near Thornwood with a few of Gallo's elite guards." A dangerous light glinted in Lucius's eyes. "We are moving on it now." Jacqueline drew a sharp breath. "So soon? Should you not wait for more backup?" "Every minute we wait gives Alistair a chance to vanish into the shadows," Lucius said, his jaw set. His gaze shifted to Serafina, standing a few steps behind his mother. Something in his tense posture eased just a bit when their eyes met. "Serafina," he said, crossing to her. He took both her hands, his grip firm and steady. "I need you to stay here. It is safest behind these walls. Promise me you will not try to leave." He was looking at her as if he fully expected her to argue. And part of her wanted to. She wanted to insist on coming, to not be separated from him again in this deadly night. But she recalled her near panic earlier and knew she would be a liability on the front lines of a raid. "I promise," she said softly. "Just, please, be careful." Lucius exhaled, relief and gratitude in his eyes. He surprised her by lifting one of her hands to his lips, a tender gesture that made Jacqueline pretend to look elsewhere. "I will return as soon as the threat is neutralized," he vowed. Jacqueline quickly embraced her son. "May the night protect you," she whispered. With a last nod, Lucius turned on his heel and strode back out into the darkness. The heavy door shut, leaving Serafina and Jacqueline cloaked in anxious silence once more. Jacqueline insisted Serafina lie down for a bit, but her nerves would not allow it. After pacing her guest room for 15 minutes, she made a decision. She had to know what was happening. Quietly, Serafina slipped out of her room and made her way to the king's study, where a radio set was tuned to the Valerius security frequency. Perhaps she could listen in. Inside the dark study, she found one of the younger guards manning the radio. He was dozing in an armchair, exhausted from the evening's ordeal. Serafina crept past him and gently lifted the receiver, careful not to make a sound. Static crackled, then a voice. Arriving at target location. No sign of movement. It was Lucius's voice, tiny but clear. Serafina's heart thundered. They were at the safe house. Another voice cut in. "The kings. Surround the perimeter. No one escapes." Minutes passed in nerve-frazzling quiet. Then suddenly, a burst of noise sounded through the radio. "Shouts!" Serafina stopped breathing, straining to hear. "Gallo's men on the 2nd floor." "Return fire!" someone yelled. More sounds of struggle. Serafina sank into a chair, her mouth dry. Through the chaos, she recognized Lucius's voice again. "Alistair Valerius," he bellowed, "it is over! Surrender now!" There was no audible response, just a lull in the noise. Seraphina's pulse raced. Then a different, rasping voice crackled through. "You think I am done, cousin?" Alistair's tone dripped venom. "This is only the beginning of the new era." A thunderous boom sounded over the radio. Seraphina jumped. Some kind of explosion. The line hissed with static and frantic shouts. After a harrowing gap, Lucius's voice came, tighter now. "He is making a run for it toward the back lane. Cover the east side." Seraphina realized with a jolt she could not do this. She could not just listen. Breaking her promise to Lucius was the last thing she wanted. But if something went wrong and she had done nothing, she would never forgive herself. Making up her mind, Seraphina darted from the study. The guard barely stirred. Down in the garage, she found a set of keys hanging on a wall hook. None of the remaining staff stopped her as she slid behind the wheel of a sedan. Her conscience screamed that this was foolishness, yet her heart propelled her forward. Seraphina drove through the gates. The lone guard posted there trying to flag her down, but she sped past, too fast for him to safely pursue. The roads were nearly empty at this late hour as she navigated the winding hills. Within 20 minutes, she saw a glow of headlights and a plume of smoke ahead beyond a bend. She parked the car and continued on foot up a dirt lane, slipping through the trees until a 2-story farmhouse came into view. The house's front doors were blown off their hinges. Muzzle flashes flickered from within. A fierce struggle was still underway. Seraphina crept along a line of hedges. She spotted Lucius's silhouette near a stone well in the courtyard, moving with that lethal grace as he avoided a projectile. Another explosion blew out part of the ground floor wall, sending up a shower of sparks. Seraphina shielded her head as debris rained down nearby. The fighting abruptly ceased after that blast, giving way to shouting. "Alistair, stop!" That was the king's voice echoing from inside. "It is over. Drop your weapon." Silence followed. Then Seraphina heard a scuffle of feet on gravel toward the back of the house. She raced along the hedgerow to get a view of the rear. There, 2 figures were running toward a car parked under a clump of trees. Even in the dim moonlight, she recognized Alistair's lanky form dragging someone, Dominic Gallo, who was limping heavily. They were escaping. If they got away now, everything would be for nothing. Worse, they would come back with a vengeance that would haunt Beatrice and Lucius forever. Seraphina's blood surged. She would not let it happen. Spying a fallen weapon on the ground, dropped by one of Gallo's injured men, she snatched it up, her hands shaking. She braced herself behind a low stone wall and leveled the device at the car's tires. She squeezed the trigger. The sound rang out into the night. Her first shot punctured the rear tire of the sedan with a loud pop. Alistair whirled toward the unexpected noise from behind. Seraphina fired again, shattering the car's back window. Gallo ducked with a curse, and Alistair recoiled from the spray of glass. In the same moment, Lucius and 2 of his men rounded the corner of the house, alerted by the shots. "Stop them!" Lucius shouted. Alistair realized he was caught between 2 fronts. With a snarl of rage, he shoved the wounded Gallo toward the car's far side. "Get down!" he barked, then unleashed a desperate sweep of fire toward Seraphina's position. Seraphina yelped and dropped flat behind the stone wall as the projectiles zipped overhead. One of Lucius's guards went down, hit in the leg. Before Alistair could act again, a thunder of returning fire erupted from Lucius's side. Alistair dove for cover, but not fast enough. A shot caught him in the leg, and he howled, collapsing to one knee. Lucius sprinted forward through the darkness like a panther. Alistair, injured and cornered, raised his weapon at the oncoming threat, only to hear it click, out of ammunition. Lucius reached him in a heartbeat, kicking the empty weapon from Alistair's hand. He seized Alistair by the collar and slammed him against the bullet-riddled car. "Traitor!" Lucius snarled, his voice a low, terrifying vibration. "Your time is up." Alistair fought back with a wild swing, catching Lucius across his jaw. Lucius grunted, then drove his fist hard into Alistair's gut. As Alistair doubled over, Lucius wrenched him around and pinned him face down over the car's hood, locking his arm in a joint-cracking hold. Dominic Gallo, seeing his last protector subdued, stumbled out from the other side of the vehicle with his hands raised. I surrender," he panted, his arrogance finally broken. By then, the king and more of his men had arrived from inside the house to secure the scene. 2 soldiers grabbed Gallo roughly and forced him to his knees. Others swarmed around Lucius and Alistair. "It is over, cousin," Lucius hissed, leaning hard on Alistair to keep him pinned. Alistair let out a broken growl of pain and fury but could not break free. Seraphina stood shakily, lowering the weapon she had miraculously never dropped. Her knees nearly buckled with relief. They had done it. Alistair and Gallo were captured. Within moments, restraints secured Alistair's wrists, and he was silenced. Lucius finally stepped back, his chest heaving with an effort he usually did not have to make. His eyes immediately searched the darkness. His eyes found Seraphina emerging from behind the wall. They widened in disbelief. "Seraphina?" She managed a weak smile, inching forward. "I promised I would stay at the villa. I am sorry." A half-laugh, half-sob escaped Lucius's throat. He closed the distance between them in a few strides and wrapped her in an embrace so tight her feet briefly left the ground. "You are the most stubborn, reckless woman I have ever met," he murmured, his voice shaking with an emotion that felt entirely human. "And I am so grateful you are all right." Seraphina pressed her face against his shoulder, clinging to him. The terror of the night crashed over her in a wave. "I could not sit and wait," she whispered. "I had to help you." Lucius eased back just enough to frame her face between his cold, strong hands. Dirt smudged her cheek, and he wiped it gently with his thumb. "You did help. You stopped them from escaping." He looked at her as if she were some marvel he could not quite fathom. "Seraphina, do you realize what you have done for my family tonight? You have secured our future." Seraphina shook her head, tears spilling now. "All I cared about was not losing you," she admitted in a broken whisper. Something inside Lucius seemed to break at that admission. With a low groan, he pulled her into a kiss full of urgency, gratitude, and 1,000 years of unsaid promises. Seraphina melted against him, returning the kiss with everything pent up in her heart. In that moment, amidst the smoke and the ruin of the safe house, they were just 2 souls clinging fiercely to each other. A throat cleared discreetly nearby, and they broke apart, both blushing despite the darkness. The king looked on with a faint, knowing smile. "Lucius, handle the rest of this tomorrow. We need to leave before any unwanted eyes arrive to ask questions." "Yes, father," Lucius replied, slipping an arm securely around Seraphina's waist. "It is done here." Within minutes, the Valerius men loaded their prisoners into vehicles. Alistair and Gallo would face the harsh consequences of their betrayal soon enough. As Lucius helped Seraphina into the back of his car, she winced at the marks on his face. "You are hurt," she fretted softly. Lucius shook his head. brushing a lock of hair off her cheek. "It is nothing I will not heal from, thanks to you, my love. We are alive, all of us." He paused, his eyes shining with a light that seemed to rival the stars. "I can never repay you for your courage." Serafina took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Maybe just stop trying to push me away," she teased gently. A quiet laugh escaped him. "Deal." They leaned into each other as the convoy of cars pulled away from the dark farmhouse, leaving the wreckage behind. Serafina knew there would be difficult days ahead. Questions from Beatrice, secrets to keep, and the weight of the supernatural world on her shoulders. But as Lucius pressed a tender kiss to her forehead, she closed her eyes, feeling safe for the first time that night. They had walked through fire together. Neither of them noticed the dawn sun breaking over the horizon as they approached home. They had won this battle, but they knew the world they lived in was one of eternal shadows. As they reached the estate, the guards bowed low to them both, acknowledging Serafina as one of their own. The ruse of the engagement was no longer necessary, yet as Lucius led her inside, he did not let go of her hand. The night had ended, but their story was just beginning. Serafina had entered Thornwood as a mere guest, but she was leaving the wedding as something far more: the woman who had saved a king. In the quiet hours that followed, as the household settled into a weary peace, Serafina and Lucius sat on the balcony of his chambers. The world was waking up, but they were content in the fading moonlight. "There is a weight to our lives," Lucius said softly, looking out over the Tennessee hills. "A weight you were never meant to carry." Serafina looked at him, her heart full. "I chose to carry it the moment I said yes to your mother, and I would choose it again." Lucius smiled, a true, brilliant smile that reached his eyes. "Then we shall carry it together, for as long as we have." The Valerius estate was bathed in the soft glow of a late autumn afternoon, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant, earthy musk of the woods. The chaos of the wedding and the betrayal of Alistair had faded into the annals of the family's long history, though the lessons learned remained etched in their minds. For Serafina, the transition from a life of ordinary routines to one of ancient lineages and hidden truths had been a profound journey. She stood on the grand terrace, looking out over the sprawling lands that now felt like home. The bond she had forged with Lucius was no longer a secret or a ruse. It was the foundation of her new existence. Lucius joined her, his presence a steady, cooling breeze in the warmth of the sun. He looked at her with an expression that combined the weight of his centuries with the freshness of a new love. "You look thoughtful," he remarked, his voice a gentle hum. Serafina turned to him, a smile playing on her lips. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. How a single moment, a single choice, can redefine an entire life." Lucius nodded, his gaze following hers to the horizon. "It is the nature of existence, is it not? We are all but a collection of choices, and the consequences they bring. But some choices, like yours to help us, have a ripple effect that touches more than just one life." As they stood there, Serafina realized that the true essence of their experience was not the danger they had faced, but the profound human and inhuman connection that had emerged from it. Life, in all its complexity, is a tapestry woven from threads of vulnerability and strength. We often believe that we are defined by our status, our power, or our longevity. Yet the most enduring parts of our souls are shaped by the moments when we choose to step outside ourselves for the sake of another. Serafina had seen the king of a hidden realm tremble with fear for his family. And she had seen her own mortal heart expand to meet a challenge that seemed impossible. It was a reminder that courage is not the absence of fear, but the realization that something else is more important. In the eyes of those who have lived for centuries, time can become a burden, a repetitive cycle of shadows. But through Serafina, Lucius had rediscovered the beauty of the fleeting moment. He had learned that love is not a pact or an alliance, but a living, breathing force that requires constant nurturing and the willingness to be seen in one's entirety. For Serafina, she had learned that her ordinariness was her greatest strength. Her ability to feel, to fear, and to love with the intensity of a mortal life brought a light into Lucius's world that no amount of ancient power could replicate. They were two halves of a whole, balancing the eternal with the ephemeral. The lesson that remained, as the shadows grew longer on the terrace, was one of profound humanity. It is the realization that no matter how much time we are given, whether it is 80 years or 800, the value of that time is measured only by the depth of the love we share and the compassion we show to those around us. We are all, in a sense, navigating a world of shadows, searching for a hand to hold and a heart to trust. The true victory is not in defeating our enemies or securing our thrones, but in the quiet moments of connection that make the struggle worthwhile. Serafina and Lucius had found that victory in each other, a testament to the idea that love is the only true immortal force in any world. As they walked back into the mansion, the heavy doors closing behind them, they did so with the knowledge that the path ahead would not always be easy. There would be more challenges, more shadows to face, and more choices to make. But they would face them with the wisdom that comes from having survived the fire. They had learned that the most profound healing comes not from the absence of pain, but from the shared experience of it. In the end, it is our willingness to be vulnerable, to risk everything for the sake of a bond that defies logic and time, that truly makes us alive. And as the stars began to peek through the twilight, Serafina knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, a mortal heart beating in harmony with an eternal soul.